Welcome, everyone, to the second episode of the TheMedLifers podcast. As you already know, my name is Guda, and if you'd like to know more about me and or what I do, why I'm doing this podcast, you can check my first episode where I talk about this in great detail. You will find the link in the description below. If you like to listen to more of this, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. And yeah, share this with friends. Today's topic is about my thoughts of the World Cup in retrospect, football-wise, from organizational point of view, and much more importantly, I will be talking as well about the saga that surrounded the whole thing in terms of bribery, corruption, and violation of human rights. To start this off, let's talk about the football part. I think the football was great. I think whether you're a football fan or not, we could all agree that we've witnessed some of the biggest shockers in terms of the results. We've seen Saudi Arabia beat Argentina, who actually went on to win the entire thing. We've seen Tunisia beat France, France who reached the final of the competition. We've seen Morocco do the unthinkable, and in the toughest group in the group stages, they managed to actually beat football heavyweights like Belgium and get a draw with another like Croatia, and actually qualify at the top of that group. Not only that, they went all the way. They've beaten Spain in the round of 16, and they have also beaten Portugal in quarterfinals, and reached the semifinals. Reached the semifinals for the first time in the African continent history that an African nation reaches the semifinal of the World Cup, that an Arab nation reached the semifinals of the World Cup. I mean, the whole thing was just like was just like a dream. The stadiums were great. The broadcasting was second to none. Also, the new rule of added time is outstanding, and it encourages players not to waste time. I actually hope it gets implemented in all of the leagues worldwide. As a football fan, I would love to see a 90 minutes of football being played, not 90 minutes on paper, but in reality, it's just 60 minutes played, and the rest is basically time wasted. So I'm 100% behind this new officiating rule. We've probably witnessed the greatest World Cup final of all time. I mean, all the drama, the goosebumps, and the emotional roller coaster that it was just beyond exceptional. Usually when you're a team that is playing well and have a decent lead, and then get, concede twice like Argentina had, usually you would lose such a game. Usually there is a momentum shift, and all of a sudden it's a psychological advantage to the other team. But this was not the case. This was not the case, even though it happened twice to Argentina in that match. They managed to fight their inner demons and keep their composure in the most crucial moments and get away with that win. I mean, what a story and what a fairy tale it is for Lionel Messi to win the World Cup in this manner. And his last try for a World Cup as a 35-year-old man. It's just unbelievable. Even though I'm not his biggest fan, you gotta say this man is without a doubt is the greatest player of all time. It's not even close. So yeah, congratulations to Argentina, and yeah, it was very, very well deserved. Yeah, moving on to the organizational part. First off, let me just clarify that I have never been to Qatar, and most likely will, never will. Um, so I haven't experienced the organizational part myself, but I can just only give an opinion on the matter from basically what I've seen on TV and what have been reported, and lastly, the things that have been told by some, social media people that have great followings. I think the small country of Qatar managed to organize a fantastic World Cup. Just imagine that the furthest distance between two stadiums was about 45 to 50 minutes by car. This is just crazy. I mean, one can actually watch all the games being played at the same day, even if they were in different stadiums in different cities. It's absolutely unheard of. You can compare this, for example, to Russia in 2018. You had stadiums in very far away cities where you had to fly probably 3 or more hours if you wanted to see games of different teams in the group stages. So I believe this was a plus for this World Cup. The fact that alcohol was not served in stadiums was and I think it was only served in areas called fan zones or something. It actually made the World Cup better. People enjoyed football for what it really is. You didn't see drunk people in stadiums. You didn't see alcohol-related violence. Just because the fact alcohol was not served in the stadiums. You didn't see any alcohol-related racial incidents. If you really want to compare, please check what happened after the last European Championships final between England and Italy, and how some English fans behaved as a result of being blind drunk, and the racial attacks some English players faced afterwards. It's just abysmal. It's quite funny actually, because it was just recently reported that England, and for the first time, had 0 English fans been arrested in a big tournament. Not a single person was arrested for a crime or a violent or an irresponsible act. We could all see the link here. It's quite obvious that there is a correlation between alcohol consumption and acting irresponsibly. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind anyone drinking alcohol, not at all. In my core, I deeply believe that everyone should be able to do whatever they want to do, as long as they, that causes no harm to anybody else. And in this alcohol case, it was actually served in certain places, as I mentioned before. I think they were called fan zones, maybe other places as well, but not everywhere. Not everywhere. For example, in places like stadiums, alcohol was not served. And as I said, I believe everyone should be able to do whatever they want to do, as long as they are of no harm to others. But also, I believe one should be reasonable and also respect other people's cultures and traditions. And I think this exact point, for example, was a positive thing for the World Cup, and I think people felt really, really safe. I've seen certain, as I mentioned, I've seen certain social media people with great followings that they have been saying this and that about the World Cup before it even started. Huge criticism, and I mean huge, and not the constructive criticism type. On the contrary, it was a disruptive type, in my opinion. But then again, some of these people went to Qatar to experience the World Cup for themselves, and afterwards they went on saying how great of an experience it was for them, and how safe the place was, and how hospitable the people there were. So yeah, I would say props to Qatar for this during the tournament organization. It was really good to see on TV, I must say. Um, so the last point today is about the saga around the whole World Cup and the issue with Qatar, in terms of the human rights violations, with the migrant workers and so on. I believe there comes the trickiest part of the podcast today. And I would say let me run let me run through these bunch of yes/no questions, or some would call them rapid fire questions. So, did Qatar deserve to host the World Cup? No. Did we know that for the past 12 years? Yes. Did we know that FIFA is corrupt and some individuals got paid big bucks to push forward the Qatar proposal? Yes. Did we do anything about it for the past 11 years? No. Did FIFA and most national federations know about the kafala system in Qatar? Yes. Did Qatar violate human rights? Yes. Did Qatar mistreat and enslave migrant workers? Yes. Are the numbers as bad as portrayed in the Western media? No. And don't get me wrong, overall it's really, really bad indeed. Because every life matters, and one life lost is basically one life too many. Did we know that Qatar does not support the rights of the LGBTQ community? Yes. Did we know that for the longest time, and they do that for religious reasons? Yes. Did the entire Western media start putting all of this forward just before the World Cup had started? Yes. Do I believe that the Western media have a certain agenda against the Arab region in general? Yes. Okay, I think these questions were enough for the moment. I understand why many people were questioning the legitimacy of the entire procedure, and of Qatar being chosen to be the host. I was questioning that myself. But I mean, the decision was made. The preparations had started. The money was already being spent on building the necessary infrastructure. And as we all know, it was built by migrant workers who were not treated fairly. I guess my question is, why is all of this was being brought up just, in the past year or year and a half? Why was, this, why was it just brought up exactly a few months and sometimes a few weeks before the tournament started? I feel like overall in the West there is an agenda against the Arab region in general. I mean, I don't know. Last World Cup in Russia, for example. Let's take Russia as an example. Russia, they don't have LGBTQ rights, and no one said a thing about that. Russia is one of the biggest suppliers and sellers of weapons and ammo to the African countries that have civil wars going on. These weapons are used to arm children to participate in these civil wars, and gets them eventually killed. No one said anything about that before the World Cup started in Russia. Russia had a beef with the Ukraine for the longest time, and nobody said a damn thing at the time. Okay, let's do another example, just for the sake of it. Let's take China, for instance. So China is, as probably almost everybody know, China has one of the most dictatorship regimes in the world, and nobody says a thing. China is mistreating and marginalizing the Muslim minority that lives in there. I mean, they are called the Uyghurs, so they are marginalizing them, and nobody is saying anything about that. Why? Well, because if they said anything bad about China, your NBA games will not be broadcasted in China. Your English Premier League will be boycotted in there. Your trades with China will suffer. You will not, they will not accept your garbage to be disposed and recycled in there. So ultimately, you're losing billions and billions of dollars if you say a bad word about China, or if you say something that they don't like. So basically, you don't say it. Isn't that a double standard and absolute hypocrisy? In my opinion, yes, it is. These are just a couple of examples right off the top of my head now, and I'm sure there is much more. And just to be clear, I believe what happened in Qatar was awful, inhumane, and unacceptable. I also believe that inhumane things are happening everywhere else in the world. We just choose not to shed the lights on them or get even close. I would also say that, as a good outcome of the backlash that Qatar had, Qatar actually dismantled the kafala system, and they are pushing forward some laws to ensure better lives for the migrant workers that live in there. So I think having the World Cup in that country triggered change, which is a good thing. One other point I would like to discuss here is that just before the World Cup, some countries wanted their players to fight for certain causes, like the One Love armband in support for the in support for the rights of the LGBTQ community. I understand, of course, I understand that, but at the end of the day, in my opinion, you take the focus out of the main objective for a football player, which is to focus on playing football. Why wouldn't politicians have political meetings with the leaders of countries like Qatar and instigate a conversation about this matter? Why don't they do that? I don't think it's the footballers' job to do that, and they are most certainly not the qualified people to do so. As I mentioned before, I believe everyone should do and be whatever they want to do or be. But again, if you are, a football heavyweight country like Germany or England, for example. I'm just mentioning Germany or England as an example because they were one of the countries that were involved in One Love armband issue. So Germany, for example, as a football heavyweight, my view on the matter is that if you want to make a change and a political stand, I think you should go all or nothing. I don't believe, or in my opinion, I don't believe the armband is the most effective way of going about it. If you want to really trigger change, and what would be a far bigger political stand would be essentially boycotting the World Cup and not participating at all. Imagine Germany, a huge football country that have won the World Cup for 4 times. Imagine if they all of a sudden came out and said that they will not participate in the World Cup in support of human rights and LGBTQ rights, and the migrant workers' rights. Imagine if they do that. I deeply believe that would have been the most effective way of demonstrating and protesting. And I think that would have triggered a big change, because FIFA as an organization, they cannot afford losing a country like Germany, a heavyweight in football like Germany, to not participate in the World Cup. That's a financial crisis for them. Anyways, I think I talked too much today, and I just want to end with this note. I believe the Arab region or the Middle East deserve to have a World Cup being held there. This doesn't mean that Qatar should have been the one to be chosen for this. For the longest time, even though football is very, very huge in the Arab world, we've seen Arab countries flop over and over again in World Cups because they never found support in stadiums. Probably apart from, those 500 to 1,000 traveling fans. Seeing stadiums full of fans for Morocco or Saudi Arabia or Tunisia definitely had an impact on the results of these teams and on the World Cup in general. I believe Morocco would have never reached or achieved what they have achieved without having the support and the roar of 70 to 80,000 fans, rooting for them and behind them. So yeah, these were some of my opinions on the matter. They're basically that's pretty much it for today. Please let me know what you think in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And if you found any of what I said interesting or engaging, please share with friends. And until next time, see you.